When Blowout opened, the reviews were staggering, either staggeringly good or staggeringly horrible. People loved or hated the movie. There really was no in between. But so there we were. When did that open? In 1981, and here we are now in 2012. And what I've come to see, this film is considered, I mean, when people talk to me about movies, the films that I've been in, they talk to me always about Blowout. They love this movie, particularly internationally. I think people have really grabbed onto this film, but even so much more now here. So finally, we have our day. After Dressed to Kill came out, Brian had been developing this other piece, which became Blowout, and it was written in it was really written for an older actor and actress. They were kind of very broken down, cynical, not at all like John and I at that point. So it was never a piece that I had planned to do. John, who actually wasn't even on the list of actors that was being considered at the time, just happened to read it. And Brian was looking at actors like Jimmy Woods and just sort of very cerebral kind of, that's the way the character was written. And when John asked to read the script, I said to Brian, well, what are you going to do if he likes it? Because he really, on the page, it didn't look like him at all. And Brian said, oh, he'll never like that. And of course he did, because it was such a fabulous role. And Brian said, well, who would you like to do it with? And he said, I think Nancy would be really good in this. And he wanted to do it with me, which, how can I refuse? The opportunity to work with John again was very exciting for me. The first time I met John was at the screen test for Carrie. And I'd actually rehearsed with another actor. So Brian tested everybody with everybody else, and John came in, he was the second actor to do the scene with me, and immediately there was this incredible connection with us. And there was no question in my mind. I thought, well, he's definitely going to get this part. You could see he had the character. And we had a great, wonderful experience making that movie, but it was, little moments here and there, nothing really that you could sink your teeth into. So, cut to so many years later, he'd done Saturday Night Fever, he'd done Grease, and I was so nervous about seeing him again. I hadn't seen him in such a long time, and I thought I was worried that he'd changed. And he arrived at our apartment in New York for the first rehearsal, and we sat down, and in moments it was just that connection. We started to work, and we had such an immediate trust together. And I knew that John, it was kind of the thing where either one of us would follow where the other was. We'd make that connection. What is that chemistry? I don't know. What's the chemistry between lovers? Who can say? It just works. And we had to go through extensive improvisations and rehearsals so Brian could really rework the material for us.
Where are you going?
Absolutely no.
Wait a minute. I think you better get back to bed, really. I don't think they're finished with you yet. Come on up.
The body language of Sally in the hospital scene, I just sort of internalized, sort of had that feeling of being very dopey, because she'd been doped up and kind of, just hanging on, really. And there's a moment where she kind of notices he's cute, and she's, feeling a little flirty there. But basically, the body language there is just that she can barely keep herself awake. At that point, she's been so doped up.
I'm Jack Terry. Who are you?
Sally.
Sally. Nice to meet you, Sally.
Actually, the original name in the script of Blowout was Kate, and I went, no, it's not Kate. She's got to be a Sally. When I first read the script, I found her to be a kind of depressing and sad character. And I didn't like the fact that she was so hopeless. So I love the idea of a character having some sort of goal in their life, even if it isn't realistic.
I really love movies, you know. It's a very interesting subject to me because I do makeup.
Do you?
Yeah. I mean, right now it's only behind the counter Corvettes, but I have this dream about doing makeup for movies.
So the goal of doing makeup for movies actually grew out of an improvisation. I really don't know where it came from. We were just fooling around. So, you know, once I could see that in her, and I could wrap myself around who this character was. And she seemed not very bright. So I had to, you have to find a way to like these people if you're going to play them. It occurred to me that women that I'd met who kind of, they never really grow up and their voice is sort of stuck here and they don't have to take responsibility. So that's why we kind of developed that voice for the character, a childish kind of voice.
I've seen these big movie stars like Barbra Streisand, you know? They don't do her right.
No.
I know how to fix her face.
Really?
Poor George Leto, who produced it, said the first day, he said, "Are you going to talk like that through the whole movie?" He said, "Yes, George." He said, "And John's not going to shave? This is my movie star." So it all worked out in the end, but I don't know that he was very confident. I had an image of her as a kind of a rag doll. That's where the red curly hair came from. And Brian, of course, wanted that difference. But we also talked about La Strada and Julieta Messina, who I love, and Born Yesterday, and kind of, led by the nose by any man that happens to come along. So with that in mind, developed this character. And Anne Roth came up with the idea of, I told her that I saw this little rag doll. I told her how I saw this character, these curls, and I talked about hope. I talked about how the journey of this woman, and she came up with the idea of a rabbit's foot, that the character would have come up with a rabbit's foot, and that she'd wear it all the time, whether you saw it or not. Perfect example of Anne. She didn't do all of Blowout, but she did come and do my costumes for Blowout. The character of Liz in Dressed to Kill, she's a very savvy, very sharp woman, very bright and ambitious, who's in charge of her life. And Sally is a little less sophisticated and kind of simple. And certainly she is someone who's easily victimized. Sally is more easily victimized because of her naivete. And Liz, even though she becomes a victim of sorts in the film, there's nothing, she's, she takes charge and she'll go after it herself. She makes all of those decisions. So, we see a little aspect of that in Sally, but she's really doing it to win Jack's favor when she gets that film from Manny Karp. Love that name. Other than the fact that their sexuality comes into play, Liz is a woman who uses, in a very specific way, her sexuality to manipulate, whereas Sally is in some sort of fantasy that she's helping. She's been told that she's actually helping people, women, in that she's revealing these men are cheating on them. So she's, but she's using her sexuality in that way and, in a not very bright way. She's being used.
What's the first thing you see when you meet somebody?
Legs. I'm a leg runner.
No, that's not right. Come on.
All right. Face. You see the face, right?
Exactly.
When we reworked the script, we did a lot of improvisation to find these new characters that would fit John and I. And John is one of those actors where he's very consistent and you can certainly rely on him, but every once in a while he just will throw something that really takes you off guard. And when we were shooting the scene in the cafe that goes into the flashback of the story when he was an undercover cop and all of that, and we had shot this scene and rehearsed this scene ad nauseum. I mean, and it was probably getting a tiny bit robotic. And I looked at him and I said, so, how'd you get that job?
Right, you're a Sandman, right?
Yeah.
Okay, how'd you get that job?
And he's supposed to start to tell me the story. And he just threw me, said, good question, I don't know.
That's a good question. I don't know.
And I just looked at him, and it was great because there was that very real moment in there. And he actually does it again, and I love it. Anytime that I've seen it, I love seeing that scene because it was a very magical moment at the end where he's trying to convince me to stay.
Would you do me a favor? Would you stick around for a couple of days?
I keep saying, I don't know.
God, no, I'm in a hell of a lot of trouble already if I stick around here.
And then all of a sudden, unrehearsed, he leaned over and he whispered something in my ear.
I'll think about it.
Which for me was kind of funny, what he was saying. And I thought it left something very sweet at the last moment of that scene between them.
What did he say?
Oh, well, it was, if you know John, it was something about food, ice cream, this kind of thing, and that's all I'll say. I think Brian really enjoyed shooting scenes with the two of us because we'd have fun and generally find something different or that maybe wasn't in the script that we could bring to it. So we all had a good time.
Oh, God, please.
You know, I'm very claustrophobic. And Brian told the special effects team that I had a problem and they had to make the car and set it up in a way so that I could feel immediately that it was easy for me to escape. And when we got there, I looked at the car. It was in the water. The top was off, and there was this tube of sorts that I'd have to slither into to get into the car. So it really was, and the car was in the water, under the water. It was terrifying, and there was a man, stuntman, who was in the car with a tank, underwater, scuba tank, and that water rushed in so fast into that car that I have to tell you that I was able to do one take. Every bit of horror you saw on my face was for real. And I made it out of there, and I couldn't get back in again. So the lovely body that you see being pulled out is not mine. It's actually somebody else's. It was horrible.
Sally? Hi, I'm Frank Donahue.
Oh, hi, nice to meet you.
Listen,
John Lithgow, of course, as you know, is a masterful actor.
I think we got a little problem.
What's that?
I loved working with him. He was a delight. I think my favorite scene with John, it's sort of funny, it's another improvisational scene that we did. The scene where we're walking down the platform in the subway wasn't really scripted, and Brian said, well, I need to get this shot. He said, so just talk about something, just, blah, 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 whatever you're going to talk about. So I'd remembered at the time there was a crazy person in New York that was running around the subways, hitting people, stabbing people. So I tell this story to him, and then when I saw it, it was really, really kind of funny.
It's not even safe anymore, you know? It reminds me of that story about that guy in New York. You remember that one?
Yeah, I think we did a piece on him.
Yeah, he's the guy who'd ride the subways at rush hour and he'd stand in
He's
the corner.
totally not listening to me at all.
Nobody'd notice him, you know?
John does not have much to say in the film, but his presence is powerful, very powerful. When we got to shoot the end of the picture, he's so, well, first of all, he's huge. So it was freezing cold out, and you really use I could use the element of the cold and his size to just let myself feel fragile.
God, no.
And I knew he was so large. I know he wasn't going to drop me as he was throwing me around. And Brian did tell him, because John was not being very rough with me, and Brian kept saying, no, I really want you to throw her around. And so I think it's always hard a little bit. It was probably harder on him. I just had to kind of fight him off, but it was difficult. And then, of course, we shot some of it in Philadelphia, and then we had to match some of that stuff on the sound stage. But I loved shooting that scene. It was great. When I read the script originally, before John and I were involved, it worked. It was perfect. It was all just, it all worked, and the female character being killed at the end, it all worked. But once it changed, and you had this couple, John and I, together. Paul Hirsch, who had edited many of Brian's films, Paul and I, we were really lobbying. We said, you cannot kill this girl. If you're going to kill this girl, you better give them a romance for people to really feel the tragedy of it. And so it was Paul and I against Brian and John, and well, I guess we know who won. But you know, I think the film works. I think the ending is right, but Paul's point of view was, John Travolta's got to save the girl. But I think in the end, we were both right. I think certainly she had to die, but I think a moment, it didn't, not a lot, but there could have been just that thing where you knew that they really cared about each other. And I don't know that you felt that when you saw the movie. The release was less than successful, I'm going to say. Part of that was the fact that it really wasn't a summer movie. It came out in July. The studio gambled on opening it in the summertime because they thought, well, John Travolta, it's going to be a big blockbuster. And Brian knew, and we really knew going into it, in the time, it was really a fall picture. It was a dark film, and it was really hard. It was really hard to read some of those reviews. I think it was particularly hard for Brian because he loved the movie so much. John fared pretty well because mostly across the board people loved his work. He'd come off of a couple of not great films, so this was showing him in a very different way. And with my character, again, people either loved or hated what I did. There was a critic that I loved and really respected in Detroit. She was the editor of the entertainment editor of one of the big papers there. Loved me in Dressed to Kill. And she said, I can never forget it. It's funny how you always remember your bad reviews. She said every time she opens her mouth, it takes you a full minute to recover. I thought, oh my God, that's horrible. So it was, you know, you have such hopes and dreams for film, and you know it's a good movie. You can feel it when you're making it. You know, we knew we made a really good movie. So when it just kind of fizzles, it's really, really sad. But Pauline Kael at the time was the most important critic in New York, and she wrote an amazing review of this film. And I don't remember. I think there was another, she was a disciple of Pauline's, Veronica Gang, who was writing for the Soho News at the time, which was a very hip, important paper in New York and on the scene there. And I don't remember her review. I remember it was a very good review, but I also walked away. She was so creative in her writing. I wondered what movie she saw, but she really liked it.